Hi, I'm Dr. Bahati Hard. I am a board certified family medicine physician, and I want to just talk to you really briefly about lactose intolerance. Now, that video was really kind of funny, but there are a lot of serious things about lactose intolerance that I think it would benefit us to discuss. So, what is lactose intolerance? It's an insufficient breakdown of lactose sugar in the small intestines. So, lactose is found in dairy products, kind of like some of the ones that were featured in the video. And lactose is normally broken down during digestion by an enzyme called lactase. So lactose is broken down by lactase. And this occurs in the small intestine. So lactase is located on the microvillus membrane of intestinal absorptive cells. The job that lactase has is to hydrolyze intestinal lactose to glucose and galactase. If there is a lactase deficiency or lactase levels are low, undigested lactase fails to be absorbed in the small bowel or the small intestine. And it then travels to the colon where it can create gases and other byproducts that lead to the symptoms that we experience. And those symptoms, again, are abdominal pain, cramps, nausea, bloating, flatulence, and diarrhea. Lactase deficiency varies across racial and ethnic groups, with the lowest prevalence in Europeans or European Americans, and then the highest prevalence is in African Americans, like myself, Asians, Asian Americans, Native Americans, and Hispanics. However, in Africa, some ethnic groups have high rates of lactase deficiency and others do not. So I think it's a misnomer to think that all folks that hail from the diaspora or from Africa have genetic lineage that links back to Africa have issues with lactase deficiency or lactose intolerance. That would be a misnomer. So if you are concerned about or you believe that you have lactose intolerance, you should first talk to me, your doctor or your provider. She or he can order a series of several tests, some invasive, some not so much so, and those will be based on your symptoms or your clinical status. Those tests include, but are not limited to, a lactose hydrogen breath test, just a breath test, a lactose tolerance test, and then a little bit more invasive test for lactase deficiency. And those could be done through genetic testing or even by small bowel or small intestinal biopsy. There are other potential causes of these symptoms that we discuss. So it is important that I mention to you that there is a broad differential diagnosis or other things that might be causing those symptoms. And those could be included but not limited to something like a cow's milk allergy or even some malabsorptive symptoms. So, or syndromes rather. So if you're having any issues, again, I'd encourage you to talk to your primary care provider and she or he will take it from there. So just because you have a lactose intolerance, which I do, does not mean that you have to completely avoid dairy. Lactose intolerance can be managed or mitigated in a variety of different ways. The management should be geared towards mitigating, as I mentioned, the symptoms, but also in maintaining a calcium and vitamin D intake, as well as potential treatment of any secondary causes, kind of like the ones that I mentioned. So, dietary lactose restriction, so avoiding foods or beverages that have high concentrations of lactose or high lactose contents. And we'll find that the things that have the highest content, lactose content, are going to be like whole milk. And the amount of vitamin D that you get from whole milk is essentially the same as what you get from an almond source or something like that. So the dietary restriction of lactose containing products is important, and then the enzyme replacement. And so what does that mean? So the enzyme that we mentioned before, lactase, which has that effect in the small intestine, there are some commercial products that contain that enzyme. And so those of us who have deficiencies would be less affected if we took these supplements. And those are like Lactaid, Lactase, Dairy Ease, those kind of things over the counter. So I find that frequently folks that have lactose intolerance issues purchase even Lactaid milk. I am an almond milk drinker, and you'll see behind me that I use, and this is not a plug, but I use something called an almond cow. This is it. This is what it looks out. It's really, really easy to use. And you essentially use various nuts or nut-based products. So coconut flakes, or these are actually pumpkin seeds. It makes a pretty kind of creamy sort of milk. Cashews, and then lastly, almonds. So this little machine here, and there are several other commercial preparations. There's like the Nutter and a couple of other things. And I don't want to get sidetracked talking about this, but in less than 60 seconds, you can have a container of milk that's essentially this size. So less than 60 seconds, you put a bunch of things in, depending on your taste. For me, I add medjool dates, frequently vanilla, some salt here and there. I don't have hypertension. But you can do anything. And if you have kids, you can make blueberry milk or strawberry milk or things like that. You can kind of make it fun. So not to get sidetracked, but that's just an option for you if you are a person who suffers from lactose intolerance. Any questions, feel free to hit me up, but more importantly, contact your primary care provider and have these kind of discussions with them. I'm sure they'd be happy to accommodate.